let's look at how it looks in code. So we have them down here. This is basically one drop-down list. There's a drop-down list, and then there's the binding to the OS ID, and then here's the data source, and it's configured with a select and a connection string, and then that's it. And then for the edit item, or for the normal display item, there's just the OS name. So what you should note here is that for this to work, this column in the data grid needs both an OS ID and an OS name. So the select statement of the where is it? The main data source for the data grid, the select statement, here it is, must return both of these values, although it's only the OS name that is displayed. Let me go over here and show you. So basically this is the select store procedure, and here it shows here's the operating system name column, but we also need to return, although it's not shown anywhere and it's not used as a column, we need to return these ones, otherwise the data grid won't be able to bind. And please note that it's important that this the name of this column is the same as is used. Where was it? Oh, sorry. Here, and also you should have the same number when you have the store procedure. When you want to update and insert, it should also have the same name. That's important. Okay. Well, so that's more or less it. Let me explain just briefly. Oh no. Let's go back to the sign mode. Let's look at this one. So when I click add, I just added this link button and I double click on it, and then we come to the code here. So basically when I click add, I need to implement the functionality. Oops. Because for the update and for the delete button, there is a command on the data grid, but for insert it doesn't do anything. Insert is not implemented with the data grid, so I have to implement an unclick operation or function in the code behind, and this is the one I have here. And basically what I have to do here is call insert on the data source, because it's not done automatically by the data grid, or sorry, the grid view. But I also need to do something else. I need to get the values in the grid view and insert those in the into the data source insert parameters, because it's not automatically copied from the grid view over to the insert parameters. And that's what I'm doing here. So I'm doing it in a little bit funny way, so let me explain that. So I loop through all the insert parameters and I try to find those. Basically this link button is part of the row that I'm actually editing, so from that one I can find the values, and so for every parameter each parameter has a parameter name, and this is these parameters that we're talking about. Okay, so I loop through those and I insert them into a list, and basically the list is just a class member, and I create a new one here, and it's object, since I don't know what kind of values I'll have. So I just add all those here, all the values to a list, and then I call insert. And what insert will do is that it'll create this event, data source inserting, which happens just before insert is carried out. And here on this event I get an argument which actually has the parameters for that insert command, data source insert command. And here I can add the values from that list above here, because up here I don't have access to these parameters. Only here when insert is actually called are they actually generated. That's why I have to first add it to a global list and then insert it later on here. It's a little clumsy, but that's okay. But now I'm going to show you something even more clumsy, is the way I find the values in this from this row in the grid. So basically I come down here, and there are different ways of finding the values. So if it's the app ID I have in a hidden column, that's the one that distracted me a little bit before. So that's a hidden field, and I can find the control and extract the value. And for the drop-down lists, I also I can find the control and extract the value. I'll go into this find control now and show you how it's implemented. So basically it takes this the sender is the link button, and it has a naming container, and that naming container is the row, the grid view row. And from the grid view row I can call find control and actually find that control and return it. And now it gets a little more tricky, because then I have to, for the admin rights, it's a checkbox. So I find the checkbox in a similar manner, but the funny thing is here that I can't use find control. I have to do something else, and that's because there's no control ID. Let's go back to this code here. Okay, so for the drop-down lists there's an ID here, but for these there is no ID. These are bound fields, and there's no ID. So the way I do that, the way I do that is so I get the row, and from the row also has a naming container, which is the grid, and then in the grid I get the index, the column index of this field, the field name, and then from that I can do the row and cells and use the index to get that cell which has a control, and control number 1, or the first control in that cell is actually the checkbox. So I typecast it, and then I can find out if it's checked or not. And I do it the same way for the text, when I have to find the text in those columns, the remaining columns actually. So that's the way I generate the values for the insert parameter. And then finally, when I click the add button and the new row is inserted into the table, then after that I have to exit the edit mode. This is not done automatically, so I do it in this way. The edit index is the row in the grid view which is currently editing, so I set that to -1, which means that no row is being edited, and then it simply works. Okay, so I think that that explains all the details of how this is implemented. Now I'd like to briefly tell you about the product that it's used for testing.